Okay, welcome to part two. Sorry about that. My computer died, as was probably to be expected. Okay, so sorry, let me just see the screencast-o-matic. Okay, I think I was talking about number 4 and how in line 14 it's significant to the theme of the poem that birds are at the feeder because this shows that they are. And I'm looking at the answer choices, and I'm also considering the theme of the poem and what it means to have a bird at the feeder. The theme of the poem has to do with all of this. Well, okay, let's think about what the poem is about. There's all of this nature that the poet is discussing that the humans have no connection to, that we as humans don't have any connection to, that he seems to be pretty, if I had to put a tone or a mood to his talking of these aspects of nature, I would say that they were admiring or sort of interested in, right? Kind of wistfully wishing that he could see those things, but also, or she could see those things, but also fascinated by the fact that they've been able to remain outside of human culture. Now, a bird at a feeder is not outside of human culture. That's the opposite of that. So that knocks out C, symbols of freedom, right? Because the bird at a feeder is not free, like I talked about in part 1, because the bird needs the feeder, right? So that's where we get our answer choice B. But also looking at A and D, A says migratory. Don't fall for that just because you know birds are migratory. A lot of birds are migratory. That's just one of those tricks that's meant to make you go, oh yeah, well that makes sense because a lot of birds are migratory. No. There's no proof, there's no support in the poem to have anything to do with birds migrating. And resistant to change, again, there's really nothing in the theme about change. This poem isn't about change. It's about nature being touched by humanity versus the nature that we're able to actually interact with and see. Okay, question number 5 in lines 1 through 4. The tiger is a symbol for the speakers. So in 1 through 4, we have trust that there is a tiger, muscular, Tasmanian, and sly, which has never been seen and never will be seen by any human eye. Okay, so I think this one, if you were able to read, if you go back and read those lines, you're probably drawn very quickly to C, but A is a good trap because, again, love of wildlife in its natural habitat does seem to fit in with the theme of the poem. But is that what the tiger is a symbol for? No. The tiger, if anything, is a symbol of wildlife in its natural habitat, but not the love of wildlife in natural habitat. Fear of facing mortality, not even really sure where that comes from, except for the fact that maybe tigers are dangerous, but that just kind of feels out of left field. Belief in realities beyond the reach of experience or proof goes along with what we were talking about. I say we, like you're here with me, but what I was talking about. And then desire to escape the confines and complexities of modern urban life. Be careful about these little trap answers here. So is it probable that he does desire to escape his life and go out into this nature? Probably. But do I have any support? Does it at any point? So let's see. Look. I must trust all this to be true, though the few birds at my feeder watch the window with small flutters of fear, so like my own. So if anything, it's not that he is, and that's probably where B comes from a little bit, even though that's not the lines we're talking about. I went back to look at those because that's the shift in the poem where the poet begins to stop talking about the nature and start talking about her reaction to the nature, because that's where I would suspect to find support for a desire to escape the confines. But if anything, she's a little bit nervous to escape her confines. Not to mention, I don't have anything that says that she's confined or that modern urban life is complex or that she's necessarily even urban. These nature aspects that she's talking about, you wouldn't find them out in rural areas either. These are things that are never seen by humans. They're so deep into nature. So it's not like, oh, I was able to see a mountain lion once because I live out out in the rural area. Okay, take a look at number 6. Read this sentence from lines 7 through 9. The reader can conclude the speaker is. And the lines read, believe that the bees by the billions find unidentified flowers on unmapped marshes and mountains. Bees by the billions is kind of an overwhelming number. and that they are able to find unidentified flowers on unmapped marshes and mountains. It's kind of amazing to think of things that are unmapped these days. But essentially all the answer choices are the same. It's something by nature. So we have to think about in this line, and of course as it fits into the poem overall, whether it would make sense with the poem overall, is she awestruck? Is she fearful? Is she confused? Or is she intimidated? Now be careful here. You want to focus on the poem as a whole, but you also want to focus on the lines they're asking you about. So things like fearful and intimidated, while they might fit in with the end of the poem, they don't really show up here with these lines. So that knocks out B and D. Confused was, if I were to pick one that I would eliminate first, I would eliminate confused. I don't see any confusion here. There's nothing about this that, there's not even a single word that points towards confusion. So that leaves me with awestruck, which goes along with what we were saying earlier, which is that she is admiring of the nature, or in admiration. Okay, number 7 is probably the hardest question on this particular star passage, and it says, in the last 3 lines, which were the ones I just read, the tone of the poem shifts from. Now, there's actually 2 parts that have to be right here. The first part has to be right, and the second part has to be right. Strident to optimistic. It has to start strident and then finish optimistic. If you're going through this and you don't know what a word means, look it up. You've all got iPhones or, whatever. You've got smartphones. Let's look. Strident. Loud, harsh, grating. Okay, is that what the beginning of the poem is like? No. So that's out. Plus the end of the poem wasn't really that optimistic. Optimistic was kind of on the fence for me. It was kind of like, I could live with optimistic. Bleak to playful. Playful is kind of very particular, and I didn't see any proof towards the end about playful. Objective to moralistic. Both of those feel horrendously wrong to me. Hopeful to apprehensive. Okay, I don't love hopeful to apprehensive, but I really don't like strident, I really don't like playful, and I really don't like moralistic. So I'm going to go back and make sure that I feel okay about hopeful to apprehensive, but sometimes you have to pick the less bad answer. Okay, you find real bad reasons, or real reasons that the other ones are real bad. I said that beautifully. And then you're left with kind of a mediocre answer that you would never write yourself, but you have to pick sometimes. Okay? All right, guys, I hope that was helpful to you. What you're going to do now is you're going to be clicking on the links to read 2 new poems on your own. One's called A Blessing and one's called To a Daughter with Artistic Talent. And then you're going to answer the questions. And then there's a little quiz wherein you can input your answers to the questions. Okay, but you're going to need both side by side in order to do it. All right, have a good time.